This video is sponsored by Audible. Visit audible.com/makeanything to start your 30-day free trial today. How's it going, everyone? It's Devin here with Make Anything, and I'm pretty excited today because I just got back from the thrift store and I got this great haul. I love going to thrift stores because it's the perfect place to find inspiration. You can get your hands on all kinds of random things, and if you do end up wanting anything, it's usually pretty cheap. So today, I got these roller skate bottoms. $4. And I don't roller skate. I never would have thought to get these, but I found them at the thrift store and I realized that they would be perfect for making a little tiny 3D printed skateboard. So what makes this perfect? Well, for one thing, when you're making a 3D printed skateboard, usually people will run some steel beams or some kind of reinforcement through it because as strong as the plastic is, you want it to be strong enough to hold up your weight. Well, they have a full metal bottom. There's your reinforcement. They've got holes to screw your board on top of this piece of metal. That's taken care of. It has a foot brake on the front, but if we just flip this around and make this on the back, you got a little brake on the back of our skateboard. And it's tiny, it's got bearings, it's got really good trucks. I think these are like professional skates. Anyways, this is perfect for making a skateboard. It doesn't seem like it'll be too difficult, and hopefully I'll have something really fun to ride after all of this. So let's scoot. I don't know. Let's do it. Let's make a little tiny skateboard. The first thing I'll do is use my good old flatbed scanner to bring in a scan of the bottom of the skate. And I can bring that into Illustrator and trace it out to get a really perfect 2-scale outline of this bottom plate. So I'll just use the pen tool here in Illustrator and I'll go around and trace this as precisely as I possibly can because I want to make a nice clean connection. And then I'll also make sure to get the holes in there, that way my bolts are perfectly aligned. I'll copy that for the bottom, and then I can take all of this and reflect it onto the other side to create my full skate. I'll consolidate that into one shape, and then we can start working on the actual design of the board itself. I started out with a kind of fishtail shape and then just kept working on that and tweaked it until I ended up with something more similar to today's penny boards or even those really old banana boards from way back in the day. You know, this design actually is pretty similar to some of the earliest skateboards when they actually took roller skates, cut them in half, and used those as the trucks for the skateboard. But in my case, I want to make a really tiny board, so I don't have to do any of that. I'm just going to use the skate itself. Once I was happy with the overall shape of the board, I started working on the little details and the design of the actual board. So I created an outline around the board and around the holes for the bolts. And then I decided to take the Make Anything logo and just turn that into a repeating pattern so that I could possibly use that for the design of the grip on this board. I didn't want to add grip tape to this board, I just wanted the design of the board itself to have inherent grippiness. So that's what this pattern will hopefully do. I made a few variations, changing the angle of the pattern, and I was really happy with this third one. So we're going to put that there into place, and I'm also just going to throw the Make Anything logo right in the center as a kind of emblem because this is a Make Anything board. I'm going to go ahead and separate all these different details into individual DXF files. That way it'll be a little bit more manageable when I bring it into Fusion 360. Here in Fusion, I'm going to start out by importing first the outline of the board. And I'll go ahead and just extrude all that to determine the thickness of my board. Then I can go ahead and bring in the outline for the skate, and then I'll put a little bit of an indent into my board so that'll fit right into place. And I'll also do some cutting from the top to make my emblem pop out, and also to make space for my grip. Finally, I'll bring in my grip pattern, and I wanted to save that for last because it's really gonna slow down my computer because it's a pretty complicated outline. But I did manage to extrude that, and I gave it a taper so that all the triangles come to a point, and that should make it nice and grippy. I used the combine functions in Fusion 360 to merge that pattern with my board, and now I have my grip tape. Finally, I'll do some small details, finalizing the size of the holes for the bolts to go through, and I did that with the bolts already picked out. And I also put some fillets around the edge of the board just to make the whole thing look a little more thin and aerodynamic. Alright, so there's prototype number 1 for my half penny board. Let's go ahead and export that as an STL and start printing it out. Here you can see me printing out the board on my CR10S using Gizmodork's PETG plastic. And I figured PETG would be a good material for this board because it's really strong, but it's also got a little bit of flexibility to it, which should help make this thing a little more resilient. I haven't actually printed too much with PETG in the past, so I had to look up the rules, and some people were saying you should print with the heated bed at 80 to 100 degrees Celsius, while others were saying 50 was fine. And just to save some electricity, I decided to start with 50. And carelessly, I left that overnight without even waiting for the first layer to finish. It was already pretty late and I was lazy, and because of that, I was greeted with this wonderful sight in the morning. So clearly the print didn't stick to the build plate, and all night it just kept extruding and adding to this giant glob of plastic that wrapped itself all around my extruder and went all the way up inside of the mechanics. So that was a pretty bad clog, and luckily I was able to get most of the plastic off by just heating up the hot end and pulling it off. But it was quite a mess, and it also did take off the thermal insulation that's normally wrapped around the hot end. Without that thermal tape, I couldn't get the nozzle temperature above 232 degrees Celsius, but that turned out to be just enough to still print with my PETG. This time around, I started printing with some green MakeShaper PETG, and I actually brought the build plate up to 100 degrees Celsius and made sure that it was sticking to the build plate. And sure enough, it did work better at this temperature, and I was able to get a successful print. You can see I'm printing this pretty dense. It's a 90% infill, and that's just to make it really sturdy and make sure that I can actually stand on top of this thing and hopefully not snap it in half. Partway through the print, I decided to swap the materials just to get some multicolor action going, so I switched back to that white PETG and started printing a few layers like that. Once the top grip pattern started showing through, I switched back to the green material, and that gave me this really cool contrasty two-color pattern going on for the top of the board. After the print is done, there's only a bit of post-processing to do. I printed with a raft to make sure that everything would stick down, and so I had to remove that with my spatula. Once I removed that, we've got our board, and it looks pretty great, and it's really stiff, so it's pretty promising. Now let's go ahead and attach the skate. As you can see, it fits in there really perfectly, and then I just had to go ahead and attach the 4 bolts to hold it into place. All right, this thing is looking really cool, and I just want to make one last modification. I left a little bit of extra length here on the tail just so that I could bend it up and give myself a little bit of a kicker. So to do that, I just used my heat gun here, and I've got this block of wood to kind of block the heat from the rest of the board. I don't want to be melting the wheels or the stopper. But I just gave this a good minute or two of heat until it became nice and pliable, and then I was just able to press the tail down and give it that little bend that I want, which will help me keep my foot on the back of the board. It was pretty easy to get that bend in there, and it looks good, and it also has the additional benefit of annealing the plastic, basically heating it up so that the layers meld together a little bit stronger. That's it, we're ready to go. Nothing left to do now but try it out. Luckily, I have enough experience with penny-sized boards that I was able to ride this thing right off the bat, although the very tiny size does make it a little bit trickier. Still, I was able to ride on sidewalks, on the street, I was able to go up and down driveways, so this thing is pretty solid. I really just wanted the smallest board I could possibly ride to get around town, and this thing seems to work pretty well. It's really fun. Since I have 2 skates, I decided to start working on prototype number 2 right off the bat. This one I printed with Filamentum's Iced Green CPE material, which is kind of a PETG alternative that's less smelly to print with, and I really just like this color as well. As you can see, there's a T-shaped hole in the back, and that's meant to work with this part that I printed out on my Zortrax M200. And this is a little clip to go in my back pocket. And with that, it's super easy to just stick my board there and hang it from the back of my pants. It actually works really well, and even better when I moved it up to my waistline. Now that's what I call a super portable skateboard. Yeah. I love that little clip so much that I decided to make a second version to stick up on my wall. So I went ahead and made a couple holes and screwed this thing into place. And on top of this plate, you can slot the same type of clip. So now I can just throw my board on the wall and it's super easy to just grab and go. Usually you should expect to have to do a few iterations to get a design to work just how you want it, but in this case things were working pretty perfectly right off the bat. So I decided to kick it up a notch and try throwing on some 3D printed wheels. These are actually from a super early video that I never put out because I came to the conclusion that 3D printed skate wheels aren't really feasible. But I never wrote on these specific ones that are printed with Fillamentum's FlexFill filament. It's a flexible filament, but it's also pretty stiff, so it prints easily, and when it's printed at 100% infill like these wheels, it's pretty rock hard. So I figured, why not give it a shot? Hey guys, so I'm super excited to take these boards to the park and really put them to the test. But before we do that, I want to take a quick moment to talk to you about our sponsor for this video. If you haven't already heard of Audible, it is a monthly subscription service that gives you access to the largest catalog of audiobooks that you will find anywhere. So whether you're trying to be a more fiscal you, a healthier you, a more inspired you, Audible's got you covered with every genre you could ever think of. Now, we know that books are great. We know that books make you smarter, but that doesn't make it any easier to find the time to sit down and just read a whole book. But with Audible, that's non-issue because you can just listen. Listen to it from your computer while you work, take it on your phone, listen to it in the car while you're sitting in traffic. You can even listen to it while you're falling asleep and just have information subconsciously zapped into your brain. It's awesome. And even better, you can try it for free for 30 days right now if you just visit audible.com/makeanything or text Make Anything to 500-500. I just finished listening to Change by Design by Tim Brown, the CEO of IDEO, and in the book he does a really great job of explaining what design thinking is, means, and how it can lead to innovation at all levels of an organization or even in your own life. I'm a big proponent of design thinking, so I would definitely give that a listen, and you can do it with your free trial if you just visit audible.com/makeanything or text Make Anything to 500-500. Give it a try. All right, let's skate. Chicken, why don't you get on my skateboard? Get on my skateboard, it'll be great. It'll make the video. It'll make the video. Get on my board.
Ah, forget it. Let's ride.
Wah. Well, I may not be a pro skater, but these boards held up really well. Well, until I tried to do a kickflip. Alright, well 1 out of 2, that's not bad at all, and actually the board snapping was totally my fault because I was a bit impatient with printing this and I only used a 30% infill when I really should have gone more solid, so it's not too surprising. But what did surprise me is the fact that these 3D printed wheels held up for as long as they did. I mean, they look pretty much as good as when they were printed minus some dirt. That was super impressive. Since I snapped that board, I decided to give the CPE material a second chance and I printed it on the A5 printer, which was actually able to reach 250 degrees Celsius, and I also printed it solid this time, so this is gonna be way more sturdy. Once again, I did the post prep, and while I wasn't trying to bend the tail here, I decided to run over all of it with the heat gun anyways, just to give it a heat treatment and hopefully make it a bit stronger that way as well. I'm not even sure if it's necessary since this one is printed at 100% infill, but I'll do whatever I can to make this thing stronger so it actually holds up this time. So I just took that broken board off and swapped it out for my new one, and boy do I love having a 3D printer. Just being able to print out a new board and swap it out just like that is so awesome. All right, there we go, good as new and ready to get back on the street. Alright guys, that was a fun video to make, and you just witnessed the creation of a half penny board. I know this thing might look kind of ridiculous, but come on, you guys know I don't mind looking a little silly. But also it's got some function because I've got a grocery store like a block away, and I like to skate over there to do some quick shopping, but then I end up having to carry my skateboard through the aisles the whole time I'm in there. With this thing I can just hang it from my back pocket, and I think that's pretty awesome. If you agree, give me a little thumbs up on the video, I would much appreciate that. And as always, you can download the files for free at myminifactory.com. I'll put the wheels up there too if you want to try those out. So yeah, that's it for today. Until next time, I'm Devin, this is Make Anything, and don't forget to stay inspired.